We will now hear the Council debate motions, beginning with the Conservative Group motion, which states, this Council opposes the Mayor of London's extension of the ULEZ to the boundary of Greater London. Sadiq Khan's plan will not only force hundreds of Croydon residents to pay £12.50 a day just to drive their car, but his own studies show it will have very little environmental impact. For many Croydonians, their car is the only reliable option to get around, given the reduced public transport options compared with inner London. Punishing those who cannot afford to buy a more modern vehicle is deeply unfair and out of touch, particularly at a time when the cost of living is increasing. This Council calls on the Mayor of London to listen to Londoners, rethink this flawed policy and instead invest in improving the public transport network in Outer London to make it easier for local people to make more sustainable transport choices. Mayor Perry, do you move the motion?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I do indeed move the motion. As the motion states, my administration opposes the Mayor of London's extension of the ULEZ to the boundary of Greater London and to Croydon. I've been clear that I'm deeply disappointed in Mayor Khan's decision to dramatically extend the ultra-low emission zone in August 2023 and have objected to these proposals back in June last year. I made it clear that the ULEZ expansion will be a hammer blow to businesses and residents in Croydon, particularly affecting those that can afford it least. Unless the Mayor of London scraps his ULEZ extension, there is a risk that people with cars which fall short of the ULEZ standards will be left unable to get around, unable to pay the extortionate £12.50 a day charge. That is deeply unfair. For example, it will affect those that care for their older relatives. It will affect older residents that cannot afford to change their vehicle and affect businesses that are struggling to survive. Whilst I agree that it is important that we improve London's air quality, that work should not come at the cost of hitting families and businesses already struggling to make ends meet. As we know, the Mayor of London's own integrated impact assessment concludes that the air quality improvements in Croydon from extending ULEZ are very small. Particularly in Croydon, the expansion will only reduce pollutants marginally. The stats show a mere 0.1% decrease in some areas. Our residents will not benefit from this. Furthermore, these proposals come at a time when the Mayor of London has reduced capacity on bus services in Outer London and in Croydon in particular. I wrote to the Mayor of London setting out my opposition to his ULEZ expansion last year and have repeatedly reiterated my opposition to this scheme, outlining the unfair impact this draconian tax will have on our residents. City Hall should be investing the millions it plans to spend on ULEZ in supporting people to take positive steps to improve our environment, for example, further incentivising green vehicles and investing in bus routes and modal shift. Today, I confirm that I do not intend to sign a Section 8 agreement with TfL. We will not provide permission to install signage or cameras on our roads. Whilst I'll acknowledge that TfL may choose to proceed with the works under its reserve powers, we will not proactively collaborate with a policy which negatively impacts a large number of our residents and our businesses. We will continue to work with other local authorities to resist this decision and mitigate against its impact on Croydon's residents. ULEZ will not reduce pollution here in Croydon, but it will empty the pockets of our residents. In order to protect local people, I urge you to vote for this motion this evening and send a clear message to the Mayor of London. No ULEZ here.
Councillor Priyatura, do you second the motion and reserve your right of reply?
I do.
Thank you. Councillor Foster, you have 3 minutes.
I'm a proud former teacher, and it's teaching that's informed my mission as a Labour councillor, tackling health inequalities. I remember my students telling me how their lungs feel tight in London. That it's only when they get out of the city that they really feel able to breathe. When I was a teacher, a scientist in respiratory health offered to show me children's blackened lung tissue, speckled by particulate matter from vehicles on the roads outside their school. She also told me how dirty air leads to children growing up with a significantly smaller lung volume, and that this shrinking is permanent. Who in this room needs an inhaler? Who here knows a child with asthma? I remember how terrified I was when I had to take my daughter to hospital when she was struggling to breathe. It must be awful to live with such fear on a daily basis. Asthma doesn't affect us equally. Children in our most deprived communities with asthma are 2.5 times more likely to have a hospital admission than those in our least. As anyone with caring responsibilities knows, chronic conditions like asthma keep children off school. They keep parents underemployed and unemployed. Poor health keeps families in poverty and is a factor in why children living in poverty on average 9 months behind their peers in reading, writing and maths by the end of primary school. It not only limits a family's economic potential in the short term, but also in the long term. The ULEZ expansion is a suite of measures working to remove the worst pollutants from our air. It's about protecting Londoners from chronic and life-worsening conditions like asthma and dementia. As Professor Chris Whitty, Chief Medical Officer, said in his New Year report, we can and should go further to reduce air pollution. That our Tory mayor should be so firmly against ULEZ is little surprise. We know the Tory party are the party of new coal mines and a Prime Minister who thinks it's socially acceptable to fly in private jet from London to Leeds. The UK government has committed to ending the sale of fossil fuel cars by 2030. The clock is ticking, and there is nothing to suggest that this Tory economic crisis will be ending anytime soon. Change is hard, and these conversations need to be approached with care and respect, not provocative political motions. Our Labour Mayor of London is working to meet the pace of scale needed to overcome the challenges ahead, delivering the scrappage schemes and miles of bus network improvements the capital needs, while local Conservatives sit on their hands. So I ask, if not this, then what? And if not now, when? Madam Chair, we reject this motion.
Councillor King, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Every one of us in this chamber knows that toxic air is a killer. And every one of us should know that toxic air disproportionately affects the sick and the elderly and the young. Now, the Conservatives are trying to make this a debate not about toxic air, but about Sadiq Khan. And what this debate should really be about is the air that those of us who live in Croydon breathe. Every year, 200 of the 4,000 Londoners who die prematurely as a result of toxic air are residents of this borough. The victims of toxic air live and die in Selsdon and in Sanderstead as much as they do in Streatham and Southwark. Now look, we know the Conservatives have a very ambiguous relationship with experts and evidence-based policy. But really, surely, no one is seriously suggesting or disputing that toxic air isn't real and that it needs to be addressed. So as Councillor Foster has said, that leads us to what action are we going to take? And whether you like it or not, ULEZ has been a success. It's reduced harmful pollution levels by almost half in central London. But pollution in outer London is not reducing at the same rapid speed as it is in central London. Now that should be a call to action for all of us, because the greatest number of deaths attributable to air pollution are in London's outer boroughs, where ULEZ currently doesn't apply. But we do recognise that some have understandable concerns about ULEZ's expansion. But we know, we haven't heard it from the speech so far, but we know that 85% of vehicles in outer London are already ULEZ compliant. So almost 9 in 10 of our residents won't pay any more than they currently do to get in their cars and drive. We recognise that there is a small minority whose cars are not compliant, and that the extension of ULEZ comes at a difficult time with the country in the depths of a Conservative cost of living crisis. Now, the Mayor has said all along that he would not consider expanding the scheme without proper support. And that's why he's introducing the biggest scrappage scheme yet, £110 million, targeted to help low-income and disabled Londoners, as well as charities, micro-businesses and sole traders. That's real, tangible support for those that need it. Madam Mayor, ULEZ is not a tax on every motorist. It's a very targeted scheme to get the most polluting vehicles off all of our roads. This motion is all about political point scoring. It's got nothing to offer those of us who want to see toxic air in our neighbourhoods cleaned up. We will be rejecting this motion.
Councillor Priyachoura, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have represented Coulsdon for over 8 years. It is right on the Greater London border. Recently, Councillor Shortland and I visited St Peter's Church in Woodmanston, a short stroll over that border. Many of our residents were there. The Bishop of Croydon was there. Under Mayor Khan's plan to extend the ULEZ, to return home, we would have had to pay £12.50. Now, how can that be right? Khan says ULEZ is about improving air quality. Indeed, the speakers before have said that. Councillor King has even remarked that there is no evidence to back this up. But there is evidence. He just seems to not want to pay attention to it. The independent report that is associated with the ULEZ expansion says that nitrogen dioxide will reduce by just 1.6% and particulates by just 0.1%. This is backed up by Imperial College London, Dr. Mark Stetler, if you wanted to give him a Google. Despite Councillor Foster's moving anecdotes, that is not backed up by the data. ULEZ will not help to fight climate change. It will not help to reduce pollution in outer London. I genuinely wish that it did. If it did, then perhaps a £12.50 daily charge would be worthwhile. But how can it be? £12.50 a day, nearly £90 a week. That could be a whopping £4,000 extra per year that households across Croydon and the border could be forced to pay when already struggling with the cost of living. And it doesn't improve air quality. It's not the wealthy that will be impacted. If you can afford it, you can buy a compliant car or simply pay the charge. Local resident Una has said, "My husband and I are in our 80s. I have a blue badge. We are living on our pensions. We can't afford a new car. How do we shop, visit our grandchildren or friends?" Another local, Latanya, says, "We have a disabled child, but don't qualify for any of Mayor Khan's exemptions, so we will need to pay every day just to do the school runs." Another, Johnny, says, "Every tradesman that has to come into the ULEZ will have to charge extra, pushing the cost onto the customer. Shoppers outside won't be travelling to high streets like Coulsdon, so local businesses will suffer." They're absolutely right. Councillor King also says there isn't proper support for a rejection, that there is proper support for expanding the scheme. That's not true. The consultation the Mayor ran said outer London businesses are 90% opposed, outer London employees are 80% opposed, and visitors to London are 75% opposed. Why is the Mayor doing something like this when it doesn't clear air quality and it doesn't have popular support among anyone? This is not a partisan issue. The Lib Dems in Sutton and Labour in Barking and Dagenham also oppose Khan's plan. It is not often that three political parties agree. This is clearly a wrong policy, even if it is in pursuit of the right objective. If, as Councillor King and Councillor Foster seem to be, believing in data and evidence-based policy, you must vote for our motion this evening. Expanding the ULEZ will hurt our district centres. It will make life harder for our residents, and it doesn't improve air quality. I fully support the motion and Mayor Perry's robust actions to defend local people, and I urge others in the chamber to do the same.
I now open the vote. Please indicate your votes now. Okay, using the casting vote, the motion is not agreed and is rejected.